Good morning, boys and girls. Today we're going to be revisiting how to use vocabulary to figure out unfamiliar words again in our stories. This is an important lesson because there are many times in books that we're reading we come across words that we don't know, and using all the strategies that we've talked about before and trying to determine and figure out what those words mean. This is especially important when we talk about fantasy because sometimes authors will make words up. And you really have to try to understand what's happening in the story to really figure out what exactly they're trying to tell you. So today I want to teach you that specific vocabulary plays an important role in everything that you read, especially in fantasy novels. You need to pay close attention to words that are new to you and figure out what those words mean by using your whole toolkit of vocabulary strategies to figure those out. An example of this that I was just thinking about with A Wrinkle in Time, the word tessering. That's not a word that we've ever come across before. And so when they talked about the tesseract, really trying to figure out what that is. I mean, we could try to look that up in a dictionary, but it's a fantastical word. And then when they talked about tessering, we had to really think about, well, what was happening in the story? Well, they were moving from one place to another. So tessering was a way they were doing it. It was a way of moving. So by thinking about what was happening in the story, we're able to figure out what Madeleine L'Engle was trying to tell us by using that word. So, running across challenging vocabulary in fantasy is common, but it can also be very intimidating. That's why a lot of times people will put books down that they're not understanding and not really continue on in their reading, especially with these fantasy novels because of that. So here are some strategies that we can use to tackle unfamiliar words. Some of these are familiar. Some of these are a few things that we're going to be adding to our tool belt. So use what we know about root words. We've talked about this before. Look for a word or part of a word that's familiar. So we know what tri means. It means three. So if we know, then we can figure out what tricolor means or what trident means. Envision what's happening in the scene, like I just talked about with tessering. They were moving from one place to another, so tessering was a way for them to move. Tap into what you know about how the genre tends to work. Read forward to get a bigger sense of what's happening, and circle back to think when things start to click. Like we didn't understand what a tesseract was, we had to continue reading on. And then when they actually talked about tessering, well, then we realized what the tesseract was, what they were using in order to be able to move and to tesser. Try a substitute word that might fit. So, if you're not sure what devoured means, but he was actually eating something, just put that word in there to help you understand it. Use a reference. You can always use a dictionary or an internet or ask a friend or ask me. Get the gist of the meaning, then look for more precision later. So, the Frumbius Bandersnatch. Well, it could be the dangerous monster is really what they're saying. I don't really understand what Frumbius means or Bandersnatch is, but reading on might help you understand, they're talking about a dangerous monster there. That's the gist of it. So use those strategies to help you figure out the meaning of unfamiliar words. Now I'm going to do this with a poem. Now I uploaded a link today too that has Neil Gaiman reading the Jabberwocky poem out to you, and I love his voice and the way he reads this poem. So make sure you take a minute to stop and actually listen to that video. This book is actually by Lewis Carroll, and this poem is by Lewis Carroll. And Lewis Carroll is the author of the Alice in Wonderland stories. And this poem is written in total nonsense language. So again, that's why I like you to listen to Neil Gaiman reading it out loud, because it's very interesting how he reads it. As you go through, though, after you listen to the reading, we're going to look at just the very first couple of lines in this poem to do some of this work that we're talking about. So I'm going to focus in on just the lines above this line. Okay. So the first part says, "'Twas brilling in the slinty toes, did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mown brass outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son." So really, there's a lot of words there that I'm not understanding. I know that "'twas," I've heard that before, like it's kind of a contraction for "it was." So it was brilling. And the slithy toves. Well, brilling kind of makes me think, oh, maybe about the word beginning. That kind of seems to fit there with what I'm happening in my mind, and it's the beginning of the poem. So maybe that's what that means. And the slithy toves. Maybe like I don't know. Slithy kind of reminds me of like slithery. And toves, I don't know, like maybe some type of, if slithery is talking about, or slithy is like a slithery movement, maybe a toves is something that's moving that way. Did gyre and gimble in the wabe? I'm not sure what gyre means, but maybe it's a time or place, like in the wabe, like in the way, the gyre and gimble in the wabe. Like maybe it's a time or place that they're talking about there. Almimsy were the borogroves. Borogroves, remember we talked about how like thinking about a part of speech something might be. So I'm thinking maybe that's some type of noun, some types of a person, place, or thing. So mimsy is kind of, mimsy were. Mimsy is like describing borograves in some way. And the mome wraiths outgrabe. So maybe outgrabe, outgrow is what I'm thinking of. Mimsy kind of makes me think, but going back to mimsy too, maybe thinking like something kind of flimsy. So the borograves are kind of flimsy, like the butterflies or something. And the mome wraiths outgrabe. Mome wraiths. Wraiths makes me think of something kind of like sinister. Like something was, the mome is describing the race, but it's the race in my mind or something kind of evil. And then it says, beware the Jabberwock, my son. Well, I know what beware means. So something's with the Jabberwock is something to be afraid of. And the Jabberwock is some type of monster or something that that might be coming, because he's telling his son to beware of it. So again, is any of this exactly right? I don't know. But I was able to kind of think a little bit, get some meaning out of this poem full of nonsensical language, just by really thinking about how those words were used, thinking about what could be happening in this poem, thinking about the parts of speeches of words, replacing some of the words, like, thinking of flimsy for mimsy, those types of things. That's the type of stuff that, as you guys are reading in your fantasy stories, the type of work that you could be doing, so that you're understanding words and things that you're coming across. So when we talk about this word solving work, those are the types of things that I would like for you guys to be doing and working on as you're reading in your fantasy stories. If you're coming across anything like that you would like to show me and discuss with me, take a picture of it and tell me what type of work did you do to help figure out what those words mean. Happy reading, everybody.